Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Mike Rucker wants to fix unhappy with the fun habit. Let's find out more from Mike. Mike, thanks for being with us today.
Oh my goodness, thanks so much for having me, Bill.
Now, you've made my work easy because you've written a wonderful book, The Fun Habit. But how did this come about? What gave you the idea to write about fun?
So I'm a charter member of the International Positive Psychology Association. That was an early underpinning of really looking at psychological tools for betterment rather than mitigating, deficits in mental health. And that was around 2005, 2006 when I really got into that and used those tools quite successfully for over a decade. Really was kind of over optimizing my life for trying to find happiness. And they had been successful. But unfortunately, in 2016, I had a trifecta of sort of unfortunate events. The biggest one being my younger brother unexpectedly passed away from a pulmonary embolism. Also, I had been an amateur athlete, really enjoyed endurance sport, and found out, this isn't related to my brother's death, but found out a couple of months later that I had advanced osteoarthritis that just kind of came out of nowhere, essentially wore out the cartilage in one of my hips and couldn't run anymore. And running was really the way that I mitigated stress. And then also my wife got an amazing opportunity that uprooted us from California to North Carolina. And so although that wasn't necessarily unfortunate, we did, miss our friends and family, and the support network that we had built was gone. And so I thought I could use these tools that had been really helpful, the previous decade. And the more that I chased happiness, the less happy I became. And so I found myself in this paradox. And during that same time, maybe serendipitously or not, there was a host of emerging research. The professor that I like to cite the most is Dr. Iris Mouse out of University of California at Berkeley. But there's others as well that were looking at how Westerners, when they're overly concerned with happiness, so there's an important distinction there, not necessarily valuing happiness as a construct. I meant wanting everyone to be happy and everybody to flourish. There's no harm in that. But that people that were sort of always chasing happiness actually usually made themselves unhappy, to the point that a lot would succumb to mental illness. And so that kind of set me on a path like, okay, well, if chasing happiness is that problematic, what is the better approach? And so I had just finished my dissertation and graduated with my PhD and was sort of hungry, used to always being in PubMed and looking at research. And so I went into, back into the troves of research and found that this action orientation, really reclaiming your autonomy. And I was already familiar with that because that's a big piece of workplace wellness, but using it in your own life was investigated, but not en masse. And so we call that a research gap. And I found that quite interesting. Like, okay, here's this available tool that's right in front of everyone, but it's not well examined. And so that's kind of what started my path. And I began to connect with all these folks that had kind of looked at, engagement and, skewing things so that they're pleasurable, and really started to research it and found that it's this amazing thing that especially in adult life, we don't do enough of. And so that's how the book came to pass.
Well, that's where we want help from you today. And it's very interesting that you say that. Now, let me ask you, of course, coming through it and maybe still a bit of a touch of it around, we still hear and see about the pandemic. Did that have any effect on the way people either perceive or chase happiness or view happiness?
Absolutely. And so I think it's an amazing time to look at this topic, right? Because as adults, we have all this incoming information coming at us at all times, right? And we also like to make things easier, as we should. I mean, that's, an important part of success, right? Is that you kind of figure out what your algorithm is and then you master it and, you add things slowly but surely. But it's not like a little kid that's really exploring the territory, right? To be a functional adult, you need to, what we call in psychology, to develop heuristics so that we sort of are able to synthesize information really quickly, but that often leads to biases and also leads to very linear thinking, right? Like, I want to get to point A to point B as quickly as possible. What the pandemic did was kind of shatter that, right? All of our normative behavior, all of our routines were kind of just thrown into disorder. And so we were able to evaluate how we were spending our lives in a way that's unique to our generation, or, I know there's been pandemics in the past, but really unique, at least to my time here on Earth, right? Is because one of the issues pre-pandemic that I looked at, I specifically studied physicians, is that we habituate our behavior and then we wonder how life is kind of passing us by, right? But the pandemic allowed everyone to go, holy cow, life is passing me by. And when I emerge out of the pandemic, I want things to be better. So I'm now seeing people ask themselves questions that you just didn't see pre-pandemic, because people are really mindful of what they want, how they spend their time, and then also reclaiming that agency and autonomy, right, through hybrid work. Like, I want to have a little bit more control over, what I do during any moment in my life. And so having fun is, a big part of it is gaining back that agency over how you spend your time. And the pandemic allowed people a little bit more creative license, one, to do that. And then two, a little bit more of a spotlight on how they were spending their time. So absolutely. I mean, it's fertile ground right now to kind of re-architect the way you spend your days, right?
I know I'm more appreciative, even for the small things, to go into a store to see what I'm looking for on the shelf, to be able to talk to someone casually and not have to literally stay 30 or 40 feet away just out of safety concerns, because when things began, we didn't know the rules. We didn't know how accurate the rules were. They were doing the best they could under the circumstances. So I think it certainly made me appreciate just the small things you take for granted, walking the dog and talking to a neighbor, and within a reasonable distance, so you didn't have to be 30 or 40 feet apart and be yelling to them. But all those things seem to be coming together.
And you bring up a great point. I think we also undervalued social connection. We know now that loneliness, correlates highly with physiological dysfunction. And so I think a lot of people now don't undervalue social connection and are spending time, because they hate Zoom so much at this point, right, of making sure that they at least organize a little bit of in real life interaction, even though we could still get better at that.
Now, we talked a little bit before the show, Mike. We've had people to talk on, naturally, the name of our show is The Secrets of Success. So they've talked about success. We've had people talk about happiness and occasionally fun, but not as often. Where does fun fit in? Is fun the son or daughter of success and happiness? Are they all friends? Is there an order to them, or how do they work together?
So I love this question, right? And I think I can't give you a discrete answer, because ultimately these are constructs that people devise and create meaning for themselves, right? Like, for a mom, success might be that connection with their kids, right? Or for a business person, it might be the ability to have freedom over their own domain, and not necessarily a monetary measure. And the same goes with happiness. In fact, to some degree, I backed off a little bit in the revisions of the book, but I still think that when we look at happiness in a psychological way, we call it subjective well-being, and it very much is a quantitative measure. And so by that proxy, it becomes something that's always changing, right? And so it's a lagging indicator of how we're doing. It requires introspection, right? You have to stop what you're doing and sort of look back and go, was I happy, right? And so in that context, I really think that fun is better, because fun really keeps you in the moment, and you don't necessarily need to use it as a yardstick. And so to answer your question, because I owe you that, once you start to integrate more fun into your life, you index all of these joyful memories, and they certainly lead to happiness, because you become more resilient. You can relish on those memories. You can learn techniques to sort of expand fun's advantage. And when people are engaged with what they do, they're certainly successful. So yes, I do look at fun as sort of the glue that makes these things happen. But because success, happiness, and fun is so unique to the individual, to give you like a formulaic answer wouldn't be fair to your listeners.
I think that's a very good answer, actually, because I was trying to think how I would answer it, and you did a much better job. Mike, before we go any further, I'd like to let our audience know that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Mike Rucker. He is the author of The Fun Habit. Mike, we're going to ask you where we can get the book and if there's a website where we can learn more information about this.
Oh, thank you so much. So my website is michaelrucker.com, and you can get the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or preferably your indie bookstore wherever you live. Support those local businesses. But wherever you buy books, it's available for I believe by the time this comes out, it will be available, but it's available for pre-order now.
Well, let's go for that, because I think everybody needs more fun in their life, and we might be taking things a little too seriously. And having gone through this recent pandemic, and whoever knows what's ahead, it's never going to hurt to have some fun while we're kind of making it through together. So let's aim for that and follow your advice.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Mike, we always think of winners, and we're always told, we're number one. The schools want to be number one. And it's great to be a winner, and it's exciting to be behind them, whether it's the biggest football, basketball school in the country, the World Series, the World Cup, whatever might be prominent at that time. Do we have to be a winner, though, in our own life to have fun? And whatever winner might be, the best salesman, one of the top 3 saleswomen in the group, principal rather than teacher, etc., or can we still enjoy things?
No, you can absolutely enjoy things. So, to be fair, there's certainly like a great study just came out, and it's been replicated in previous studies. Certainly a certain level of success with regards to salary is going to be helpful. And then, certainly winning these sort of highs and lows of life, that variability, that spice of life certainly can make things more fun, but it's not a necessary component. And so we see folks from all walks of life, from all sorts of socioeconomic classes, and different sort of phases of ability have just as much fun as anyone else. So do you need those things? Absolutely not. Do they help sometimes? Absolutely. Just to be fair.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm probably the world's worst golfer, but I enjoy it and I honestly have fun with it. And yet I don't think I've beaten anybody in the last 8 or 10 years. And I'm still enjoying it. So I'm thinking, is there something wrong with me? Because everybody, you hear about this has to be competitive and you want this advantage or you want to do this. And I'm hearing about people who cheat at golf. I'm saying, why would they do things like this? So thank you for that answer.
No, and I think it's interesting. You see this in all walks of life. I know we're going to start to touch on work, but you certainly see it with parenting. When you engage in activities from a sense of duty and not a sense of enjoyment, it's a cliche, but it plays, right? Those that enjoy the journey versus the destination are the ones that really, are able to derive as much joy and delight that life offers you, right? But if you're sort of waiting to win that golf game, what fun is that, right?
And for me, I'm not going to live long enough to win that golf game, so I better enjoy it along the way. Mike, you had a question in your book, and I thought this was great for people. You say you ask people, am I living the life I want, and is it an accident or by design? And I thought that was wonderful, because it takes in 2 very, very important concepts. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah. So what I found the most that's problematic with regards to happiness in general is a concept that we call in psychology the hedonic treadmill, right? And what we know is that, one, we tend to, it's sort of this shared hallucination, right? We tend to derive what we evaluate as being happy against our neighbors, right? Because it is this comparison. I have X, somebody else has Y. Am I doing better, right? And that's just an unfortunate reality. And the other is that we adapt. So ultimately, if we are doing it without being mindful of what we really want, I get the sense you really want to play golf, so it's fun. But when you do activities mindlessly, then the goalpost is always moving on you, right? And so if things are kind of done accidental and you're just sort of waiting for the next thing to happen, then you really never know when you've arrived. But if you're mindful of like, this is what I really enjoy, I really just enjoy being in this activity or with these people or in this environment, folks derive a lot of joy and delight from nature, then you can stack the deck in your favor and find that you're always in those environments, and then just relish in the fact that you set yourself up to be where you want to be. So I think, the best metaphor is that you keep your goalpost steady, and then you enjoy the fact that you've arrived at that goalpost, rather than sort of happiness being a mirage that, you're not in control, and you sort of relinquish your agency and autonomy, and instead always fall victim to adaptation and also, comparability.
I think that's a great point, because so many people will say that, they enjoy their work, but then if their boss has changed or some of the rules are changed, it's not like it was 10 years ago, and the position is changing, and they are being controlled by some outside force. Where with fun, you can make your fun as it is. You can have fun driving home, maybe trying a new route and stopping off for something for dinner or ice cream or donuts or something you like, or see a friend. You are literally controlling your life, and it's one of the few things we can. We can control how we want, whether fun is checkers, playing cards. I'm not a card player, but a lot of people love that. If that's what they enjoy, that's great. Maybe just taking a walk and enjoying nature. So this is really an eye-opener for a book. But now I want to ask you, when you bring this up to businesses, do they look at you and say, we know businesses are a little more wide open, and we picture the ping pong table somewhere in the business environment, but do they look at it and say, we can't overdo that? Or is there actual proof of whether this helps with productivity, revenue, retention, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a whole host of, empirical evidence to suggest this is quite helpful. A landmark study from Gallup, I think it was 2018, shows that folks that feel that social connection engagement with work, have 36% fewer safety incidents, have more engaged customers, see higher net promoter scores, and tend to show higher profits. And so these things do matter. And so how do you create that, right? And the problematic thing is that if it's contrived, it doesn't work. It's often framed as forced fun, right? And so if you have no buy-in from your employees, or you're also doing it again from that place of a sense of duty, it's almost always going to fail, right? The kooky sock contests, the ping pong tables, as you mentioned. And also what's even more nefarious is a lot of these things are sort of marketed as fun, but when you peel back the onion, they're really meant to keep people at the office longer, right? Like, let's have, kind of this cool lunchtime activity so that people don't go off site, for lunch, so that they're in the office longer. And fortunately, driven a lot by millennials and Gen Z, where I do give them some credit, is that regaining that access to, I want to control the way that I spend my time, and I also want to have a voice in how these activities are created. So companies that are on the forefront of this really do listen, and then they co-create experiences that are fun. And then that leads to kind of this upward spiral that's quite amazing. One of the companies that, has gotten really famous, and now even more famous, that Yuvan has come out and made the company a company of the people, is Patagonia. He wrote a company, Let My People Surf. And, you tap into folks that work for that company. And it's amazing just to hear their stories.
I would think in fact, I was going to ask you if there's companies that we would know about, on a daily basis, products we might buy, or food or fast food or something, that are known for this, because I think you like to be part of, in a sense, they're the winners in the world, and you like to be with the winners. And most of us would rather stay with the cool kids. And in grown-up world, those are the winners. Those are the people who are successful. And if that's what makes a business successful, are there any ones that we would recognize, or that you've worked with, either major supermarkets or, as you said, Patagonia manufacturers?
Yeah, Patagonia is a good example. Another one is 37 Signals, where Jason, the CEO, has been really mindful of making sure that people are engaged at work, but that also have the vitality to do things outside of work. So I think what you're going to see as the overarching theme are companies that really do protect their employees' ability to engage in things outside of the workplace. So it's not so much, what you do at work, although that's important as well, but that also create opportunities so that they can joyfully use their leisure, right? Or connect with other employees within things that they have an affinity for. So another thing that I saw through my research of companies that really get this right are companies that create groups, like whether that's rock climbing or, whatever the activity is, but then allow cross-pollination from different groups to join that. So you might have the CEO doing a ropes climbing course with a marketing manager or whatever it is, because oftentimes a lot of this contrived fun happens only within departments with people that, already have these weird social normative behavior because of that's how that group has to operate. So people that really feel connected with their company are ones that are able to also develop relationships with folks outside of their department, because then you can let your guard down, right? When you're doing something with your boss or you're doing something with direct reports, there are power dynamics at play. And so there's this cognitive load that even though you can still have fun, so I'm not suggesting you can't, there are things that you're always kind of on because that is a component of work, right? And so I think that's, when companies get it right, it's the ones that really allow people to be free during their free time, that encourage people to use their PTO, what I call leisure, in ways that are restorative instead of grinding them down to a nub. And also ones that create opportunities for everyone within the organization to know each other and to have a good time. Google is another great example, that one allows some autonomy within your workday. It used to be 20%. I think they've, since that kind of got popularized, they've rolled that back a little bit, but they also have this amazing environment where anyone can go and play beach volleyball together or, grab some bikes and go eat together. And so you have this pollination of, different departments and people sharing ideas. And when you're able to do that, whether it's a byproduct or it's by design, you start to get nonlinear thinking too. So especially now that we're really in a world of knowledge work, you get employees that can think more with more creativity, excuse me.
Mike, you've given us a lot. I think we just took a few Ivy League courses just listening to what you're saying. Before we go further, though, I want our audience to know that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Our guest today is Mike Rucker, Rucker. He's written a book called The Fun Habit, and we're certainly having fun with him. Mike, can you tell us a little more about it, where we can get the book, and if there's a website where we can learn more?
Sure. So my website's michaelrucker.com. That's where I host. You can find a ton of information about the book and also all the research regarding fun. And the book's available wherever you enjoy purchasing books. So whether that's your local bookstore, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I'd appreciate you taking a look. So thanks for that. And this is a book.
I'm just going to do a little commercial for you to tell our listeners that we all want to have more fun. No matter what you do, you can be the greatest leader or out of work. It doesn't really matter, and maybe even down on your luck a little bit. But if you can have some fun during the day, it's going to lighten the load a bit. It's going to make it better. And it's going to make people want to be around you. And maybe it opens up that next opportunity, or just meeting someone that you are in sync with and really enjoy, either taking a walk, playing golf, tennis, going fishing, whatever it is you enjoy doing. So give yourself that opportunity. Take a look at The Fun Habit. Mike's done all the hard work, the research. He's put it together. You add your own input to it, and let's get a little more enjoyment out of life. We all need it. I think we're tired of what we've gone through the last few years, and it's time to listen to some good advice. Mike, is there a way to score fun? Do some people have a fun score that maybe you've come up with, or someone else, of 79 or A+ or anything like that? Or is it more subjective?
Yeah, I definitely think it's subjective. And I would hate for anyone to put a number because I think one of the fun secret sauce, right, is that it is an action orientation, right? And so the things that we've talked about, success and happiness, tend to be an evaluation, right? Like, am I successful? Am I happy? And fun is in the moment, right? You're either having it or not. It's pretty Boolean at that point. And if you're not having fun, you can switch to something that is more fun. If you do have that available to you in the moment. And so I would hate to put a number to it. And so, no, there's not a number.
How about if we, and it might sound, that's not going to happen, but it might for a lot of us. I was going to say if we win lotto, but I'm not talking about those giant lotto wins, $100, $500, or the church raffle or the organization we're in, something like that. If we had the choice, is it better to have, in terms of the word fun, an experience or something physical? I use it to buy a refrigerator. Now, that in a way might be fun because it keeps things cold. I might like my beer. I might like my ice cream, things like that. Or would it be better to take a weekend trip, or does it matter? Or is it, again, back to the person themselves?
No. So there, the research is pretty clear that experience over things generally tends to be the right choice. And that's because we remember rich experiences, right? And so a big construct for anyone that, looks at the book is time, right? That's really the only true discrete resource we have in our lives. Money, if we really work hard, we can get more of, and these things that allow us to do the things that we want to do. But time is that discrete asset that we have, right? And so experiences allow us to look back at that time and really relish whatever it was. So goods and will have some utility, but they have diminishing utility, right? Over time, eventually they're going to break, or we just get used to them and we're like, I know I'm here selling a book, but eventually you're going to read the book and it's going to sit on your shelf, right? And so there are goods that you can buy that ultimately might lead to a ton of joy. So an example that I often bring up is a guitar, right? I mean, if you use that guitar to create some great experiences, playing music with your friends, engaging in this pathway of mastery, then they can be really useful with regards to having more fun. But if you have to make the choice, where the research points you is that experiences definitely are more fun than things.
Mike, you've done too good of a job. I'm having so much fun. I have another 308 questions that I didn't get to ask you yet, but maybe we can get you to come back again in the future and go through them at that time. While we're still here today, though, once again, tell us where we can get the Fun Habit and the website.
So the book is available wherever you purchase books, either your local bookstore, Amazon, or Barnes & Noble. And my website is michaelrucker.com.
And that's Rucker, easy enough for me to spell and for our audience to remember. Mike, thanks for being with us today. We'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.